Well, welcome to this second video in the series on regenerative movement. The last video I made was a bit far away and the sound is a bit low. I'm going to try to get somebody to fix that for me, or maybe I'll have to redo it. I've left my external mic in Australia, so I'm in Indonesia right now. So I want to these first videos will have more talking in them because, we need to set up some protocols and there's more explanation actually enough as we begin than once we get into it a bit. So I want to talk a little bit about the nature of regenerative movement. So when we are just conceived and there's this single cell, a fertilized egg, and there's this outward expansion, this movement of growth, and cells multiply and they differentiate into different functions, and they turn into arms and legs and toes and eyeballs and bellies and lungs and all of that. And this movement, this impulse to life is what the life force is. So this is the root nature of the life force. And while we're in the room, we're constantly generating cells, and we don't do very much with our bodies to degenerate too. And even those cells will fall away and be regenerated, it's very small. Most of what goes on is generation rather than degeneration. And then once we're born and we start to move more, then we start to build muscle and all of that. So muscle cells are degenerating and regenerating, and there is all the cells, the organs and skin like sloughing off, umpteen thousands of cells and regenerating skin cells and organs, regenerating blood, white blood cells and bones and all of that. And this whole generative movement is exactly the same. It's exactly the same thing. It's the same when we do work and do strong work, and we get sore muscles, and then we have to rest. In that period of rest, it's much easier to regenerate. If we keep moving it, it doesn't regenerate so well. Which is not to say, you don't move sore muscles, but I'm saying that it's the doing of the work that degenerates. As you put stress degenerates, and rest regenerates. Now, when we want to heal something in us, rest is one of the biggest things that can heal. Sometimes we need movement to help us heal. So this impulse, whether at rest or in motion, to generate, this is the life force. So if we're going to study regenerative movement, which is really the study of generative movement, because we only call it degeneration after something has broken down. After something is degenerate, then we call it regeneration. So, so in order to study this movement that happens inside us, then we need to pay attention to the subtle levels of movement. And there's something that I mentioned earlier that regenerative movement requires a certain maturity in the body-mind line of development, which is one of the major lines of development. It's along with intellectual maturity and sexual maturity and emotional maturity. The body-mind level of maturity is in the top most important lines. And this is one which our society has abrogated its responsibility to us as individuals. So maturity in our societies really means that you survive for 18 years out of the womb, and you get the right to get drunk, and you get the right to vote. With the current state of affairs, sometimes it's good for those two things to go together. For what difference it will make. And this is part of my reason for doing this, because the appalling immaturity of the whole of my society it just needs to be addressed. And this is one way that I'm addressing it. And anyone who studies generative movement takes conscious responsibility for their own maturity as a human being. Not maturity in this or that culture, but as a human being. Okay. And what it needs is, it needs us to pay attention to the movement of the life force. And I'll be showing some things so people can do that. And many people have studied yoga and tai chi and internal martial arts and aikido and all kinds of things where they're moving the life force, and it's often said that you need to actually move the life force in order to be able to perceive it. So you have to do something with it before you can feel, and it's a felt sense in the body. And it's true that you can feel it that way and you can perceive it that way. There's a general idea that that's the only way that you can do it, and it's just not true. It's not true. You can see it with your eyes, and you can hear the vitality. And what we'll be paying attention to in our movement practice is to the vitality. Vitality in the feel of something. Vitality in what we see, in what we touch, in what we taste, in hearing. Because in all sensation, the external sensing for the five senses, the internal sensing like proprioception, interoception, introspection, these things, they all have one thing in common, and that is vitality. Different levels of vitality and kinds of vitality and flavors of vitality. In everything that we do, we will be paying attention to this. So this is one thing that we will be not only learning to regenerate the body, but we will be taking conscious responsibility for maturing ourselves as a human being. And I've got a whole bunch of tricks about that. I'm going to be 71 in a few months, and I've picked up a bunch of clues and entered into my eldership, and I've paid a lot of attention. So I'll be passing on a whole bunch of tricks and clues around that. And so you'll see that we talk about regenerating the body. And if we're going to mature ourselves, then it's clear that we need to regenerate the mind. Now, I don't know about you, but when I notice what happens in my mind, most of my thought is garbage. Most of my habitual thought, when I dedicate myself to do something, and I'm thinking about it in relationship to the whole, that thought is valuable. But most of this random stuff that comes into my brain, it's just nonsense. And from my talking to people, I know it's the same for most other people as well. And it's the biggest thing anybody of any spiritual depth of cultures will be talking about the importance of getting control of thought instead of being controlled by it. So, and I'm not saying that is not our purpose here, but part of what we will be doing is to study the nature of the movement of thought. Now, this study is direct. It's a direct perception of the movement of thought. This is not creating intellectual ideas about thought. That's just making more thought. It doesn't help. The content of thought here is not important. It is the fact of it. So we'll be paying attention to that because it's an important part of regeneration. Something I'm going to repeat from last week, I'll say this quite a lot, is that regenerative movement can't be taught. It arises spontaneously out of the body and it regenerates whatever is in need of regeneration at the time. It is this impulse of the life force which just passes straight through all of our cultural conditioning, straight through all of our physical conditioning, all of our mind traps, all of our thought forms and thinking clusters and all of that. And your body just does all this weird stuff. And it is the most amazing thing. And that is just spontaneous in the moment. And you can bring it on. You don't need to wait until it just happens to you, which would be a bit silly. And one of the things that we'll be learning is how to bring it on. And all the rest of it will be bringing our body into alignment. And we can train to do that. They train to do that in martial arts, they train to do it in dance, they train it in adult lovemaking techniques, that they call tantric sex or sacred sex or whatever. This is basically just adult versions, adult sexuality. So what we'll be doing is not qigong type things, but in what we do, we'll be paying attention to the flow of things. And our mind will be placed in a different spot. Because a part of this is to develop the ability to change the figure ground of our perception. You've seen these you've seen these optical illusions where you probably saw them in school, or if you've studied psychology, or if you've just been interested in these things and friends have passed it along, or you've seen it on the internet. And you'll see these these visuals where there's one where you've got a silhouette of two faces facing each other, like these two black silhouettes facing each other. And you can see there's a forehead, there's eyebrows, and there's nose and chin and lips and stuff facing each other, and there's a white background. When you look at it, if you're look at the black colour, the silhouettes, as figure, then the white is the ground, that's the background. But you can look at it and change your mind and think to yourself, what if the white was the figure and the black stuff, which is the background, and look at it. And suddenly this white vase appears. You've got this white vase like this with a black background. And this is changing the figure ground of perception. And there's a lot of those things. There's one of an old woman and a young woman, and there's quite a few that you may have seen. There's a turning illusion. You don't know which way they're turning. There's this woman silhouette dancing in one direction, and you change and you try to find out if you see her working the other, and you'll see her working in the other direction. And so there's plenty of those things around. So what we're going to do is change the figure ground of our perception internally, like what happens inside our body, in motion, and in our visual field as well. And there's quite a lot of that goes on in various martial arts and yoga, and you've probably done some of this before. But this is going to be a major part of what we'll be doing, because what we want to be able to do is to retrain the body-mind in movement, and any movement you like. So at any movement, we're going to retrain the figure ground of perception. And after a while, and quite quickly, it becomes subtle. And you can start to see underneath the content of thought and begin to see how thought actually moves. That's the more subtle part of it, and it's quite important, because when this spontaneous regenerative movement happens in the body, when you start to bring that on, you need to get your mind out of the way. And thoughts will happen like, oh, what's this? I wonder this one. But it just comes and subsides like a wave. And you pay attention to that part rather than to the content of thought, and you can keep your full body mind inside the regenerative process. Okay, well, I want to, actually do something. Too much talking ain't so good. The founder of Aikido, Master Yoshiba, used to say 5% philosophy, 95% on the mat. And I'm a fan of that. So I'm going to raise my voice a bit and hope that the sound will be better. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you the difference between between moving with gravity and making something happen. So if I have my hand here, that background's not very good, is it? If I have my hand here and I make it go down, I'm using it, I'm using muscle. So if I just let it fall, that's gravity. That's gravity. So let's go gravity. So gravity, and I can lift it a bit, lift it, and then drop it. And I can lift it back up again and drop it. Or I can drop it the other way. But I can also, if you've ever gotten you get a string, something on the end of a string, and swing it. So I'm going to hinge my shoulder here and use my body to swing my arm without putting any movement in it. So now, once it's moving, it's easy. And I'm not putting any muscle. I'm not doing anything inside the arm. It's just loose. Okay. There's a lot of people get attracted to regenerative movement, are people who train their bodies a lot, or also for older people whose bodies need a lot more regeneration because they're in a degenerative stage of life. And also people who have wounds as well, and people who have lived a sedentary lifestyle and it's affecting their health. And so they need to regenerate the body and learn ways to come back into the movement. So, something like this, when you're 70 is not so usual, but if you're older, to do this, you can just lean forward a bit and move your body and just see if you can have no movement whatsoever in your arm, none. Now, I'm just going to show things, and you can do them or not, and I'm showing principles, but I'm also showing some movements for those principles, and some of the movements that I show will be incredibly beneficial. Especially if you're getting a bit older or whatever. But if you're someone who is really dynamic and moves a lot, these principles that we're going into, you can just adapt it anyway. And the whole thing comes down to your own. It doesn't matter who you are. You have to find your own way. If you've got an injury and you can't do something else where the principle that we're investigating can be practiced. So this movement, this is just a swing. And like this is just a swing. Okay? It's a swing. And you can have, if I just do this, just have a crack at this. And see if you can get it going a bit bigger. Now put your mind in the swing. So this is a vital element and a vital principle. You put your mind inside the swing. So what I'm doing is I'm swinging here. Now, all I really want to do is swing. So normally if I'm doing, my feet will be like this, I'll be swinging. But because I'm training, there's a little bit of strain in the knees. And if you're an older person, swing without that. And what I do is I just let one of my feet come up like this. Okay. Now, only have your mind in the swing. See if you can keep going and close your eyes, if you can keep balance. Just be in the swing. Just be in there. Okay, so that's enough of that one. Let's do this one. We go, put your hands up, drop down and swing. Just let your arms swing like that. And then swing them up and drop. See, they're just moving with gravity. Now, come up and breathe in, breathe out. All right. Now this time we're going to add something to that. We're going to add a roll with the spine, which is a part of undulation. So this is where we come down, and then when we come up from each spine from the bottom after the other. So we come up like this. So we go. Just try that for a little bit. And what we're after here is to have the mind in the swing. So we want our mind in this thing. One thing that I do to bring my mind into the subtlety of it is I bring my hands up and like this. As I go forward, there's a tipping point where this hinge will start, my body. So I'm holding like this. If I just move that forward, see how it goes like, I'm like this, just using minimum energy to hold. But the moment I go past a certain point, it'll fall. So what I do is I come up like this and forward, 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 and drop. Now let's just come to a bit more subtle for that. If you hold your hand and just very gently make a circle. And what I want to do is, I don't want to go to the extreme range of movement. I want to back off from there. What I want to do is make soft, fluid movement. That's all I want to do. So I close my eyes. And I get this rhythm going of this soft movement. So I no longer have to think about the bits that need doing, because it's written in. My mind is only in the movement. My mind is only there. Just try the other way. You see how different it is. So your mind needs to do some readjusting, but just find a movement that is only fluid. Okay. Now I want to show something that's very practical. When you get older, getting up and down from the floor is not as easy as it once was. Knees, ankles, hips, that's the main thing. Knees are the big thing. So this movement is all older people teach each other these tricks. And this movement, as we get down, so we put one foot in front of the other, and the opposite hand, so I've got left foot and right hand, I put on the ground, and then I just swing down like this. Swing. Now if you can have a look at this foot. I come down here, and I swing. You see what happens here to this foot? So it pivots on the ball of the foot. What also happens is this shoulder hinges. It's a hinge, you see? So what I want is, as I come down, I want to let my whole body swing, pivoting on this foot and hinging in the shoulder. So give that a bit of a go. Might change the direction of this, see if this is. So stand up, opposite foot and hand, swing down. Now, in order to train our bodies, we need to train in a whole bunch of movements which are very practical. And so I'll be talking about things like walking with loose wrists and ankles and all kinds of things. So we're going to train this way of getting up and down. But we're also going to train in a whole lot of benefits from things like animal movements and yoga and martial movements and those kinds of things. So this movement here, you'll have seen in the animal movement, probably done some of it yourself, where you come down, people come out like this, and they change, they go to the other side, come here, here. This is I think they call it a switching. So we're going to use this as a part of training, but we're going to do it in a way where we don't want to have a goal of ending up like this, having good alignment and looking really snazzy. The way we want to train here is in what is called mini-max, which is the minimum effort for maximum result. So, come here. Now, when I come down, just sitting, if I let my foot naturally come out a little bit, I go. Then, when I come up, if I want to change to the other side, when I come up, if I pull that foot in, it will actually begin my body rotating. Just pulling my foot in will do that, will help that. So whereas I pull my foot in, become centralized, change hands and feet, and swing down the other side. And stick my foot out. So now I pull my foot back in, and let it go out. So now I'm on my right hand and my left hand, and my right foot and my left hand, and now I just swing. And I come in on my right hand and left foot, tip, 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 swing. So when we train with this, this is a good way to begin. But if you want to have your foot all the way out, pull your elbow back, so you're getting a straight line here, so you get a little bit of counterweight When this foot goes there, you get a bit of counterweight back here. And soon we'll start talking about moving from the lower belly. But all of this is a part of that. So come like this. And then when we come in, we centralize around the axis, like there's not exactly around the axis of the spine, but in the whole around the axis of the whole body spine. So we go, see how we're centralized, and extend. So we've extended, now we draw in to the center, extend. And then later, if you can already do these actions, this is good, but we're not doing this action for the action. We're doing it so the mind can be inside the fluidity, can be inside the flow. And when the mind, wherever the mind is a concentrated key, okay, concentrated life force. If I put my mind in my knee, there's more life force there. And the life force of the body comes from the mind. It goes like this, in accordance with its natural flows. Okay. So these are, we need to keep our eye on our goal here, because we don't just want to achieve things. We don't want to do movements to get better at some activity or to sculpt our body or whatever. What we're studying here is generative movement. So the more fluid, the more strength there is, it's more of a masculine activity, then the more degenerative and the more muscle you get. Okay. So, and the more regenerative it is, comes from more rest and more calm. So we say degenerative is masculine, regenerative is feminine, or generative is feminine. And our whole approach is like this. Our whole approach is a maximum of a feminine and minimum of masculine. Whereas normally in our culture, just about everything is masculine, is mostly masculine and minimum feminine. Okay, except in women, of course. Oh no, actually, that's not quite true. But the whole culture is very masculized women too. Okay, so for practice, if you practice any kind of swing at all, this until the next video we'll go into things more deeply. I'm going to show a few of these elements. Like at the moment we're talking about the swing and gravity. We're talking about extending and centralizing. So these are just elements which we will continue to talk about. And there'll be other elements, like we did a little bit of, like we were rolling up the spine, which is a part of undulating the body. Now, I'll show you what I mean. If I had a young person's body, it would be much more easy to see, because they're so much more flexible in the spine. But, so I'll be going like, and also you can do sideways as well, so you go, and so on, each the vertebrae comes up after the other, and then the coccyx comes out here, and then I start down in my sacrum, and I bring it up here, and these kinds of movements, we put our mind in the undulation. We put our mind in the swing. So there's, a few elements like this. There's not very many, but there are another two principles which are very, very important in relationship to uncovering the intelligence of our own animal body. And these are pendiculation and tremoring. So an animal pendiculates out of rest and tremors out of tension. So there's something I think I'll do one just on those next time. So that's enough for today. I really want to restrict these down to about 20 minutes a time. But these earlier ones, as I said, is a bit of explaining to do and a bit of talk and new terminology and those kinds of things. But after the first few, I'll keep that to a minimum. Well, if I can. I've been writing a book about all this stuff, and once I get started, sometimes I can't stop. Okay, thank you very much. Have fun with that.